It's time for Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust, the greatest automotive podcast in the known world, with Ron Foreman, Brady Wright, and Steve Johan. Let's find out what's going on this week. Okay, here we are, the very first show of 2021. I can't believe I am saying that. Do you realize that this is the 169th Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust show?
Wow.
169. I can't believe that we haven't messed this up way before now, but here we are. As you know, if you listen at all, we're on iTunes, we're on iHeart Radio, Spotify. Of course, Podomatic.com is our home site, and we're adding a lot of places that we're growing some of the new social media places. We are on MeWe now, and we're also on Parler, and I'm working on getting us on Rumble. So we'll see, but stick with us. We do thank you for liking and following our Facebook page and the show page. And Steve is doing a great job of getting the videos up now. So make sure that you check those and like and follow the pages and all that kind of stuff, because it makes us feel good that somebody's out there listening.
Yes.
Right now, as usual, our first segment is Back to the Blacktop. This is where Steve collects all the cool stuff he's found out about the automotive industry, and boy, this show is going to be all about that. But he's got some lead-in stories now. Steve, what do you got?
Well, as a lead-in story, we're also just added to Bitshoot. So we have one show up on Bitshoot, and that is another video outlet. So that is an exciting thing.
And how does that spell? Bitshoot?
Bitshoot.
Okay,
so
that's
Bitshoot.com, and the nice thing is anybody who gets deplatformed from YouTube goes to Bitshoot and gets on there. Not that we're deplatformed, but it's another video outlet, and I will start loading up everything on there, mirroring everything over there.
This is why Steve is the producer.
Yeah,
because he knows this stuff. And I wait on it.
Well, you're doing Parler, and I don't know that stuff. So you're the social media guy, and I'm the digital guy. So anyhow,
I'm doing TikTok.
Yeah, well, there you go. We need TikTok. That's where my son is. So, so we're starting the new year with more than the same reflected in the more virtual events coming up. And the largest of them will be the General Motors CEO, Mary Barrera, delivering a keynote at the upcoming all-virtual Consumer Electronics Show next month.
Yep.
And
CES is a huge event.
It's probably one of the top 10 of all mammoth events. And it goes on in Vegas, and it's interesting because the bad news is all the prostitutes down there will not be busy during that time, because for those who do not know, it is one of the high times of the year.
Prostitution in Las Vegas, you know that, right?
What's that?
There is no legal prostitution in Las Vegas.
It doesn't matter. It happens to be very, very big with the consumer electronics.
Well, especially because the same weekend of the show is the adult video network.
Yes, that's right.
Show. That's why.
And they do it together because they know all the geeks like to do the porn.
You guys know way too much about all this prostitution.
It's in the same hotel, usually. So
yeah, it is what it is. So speaking of
Don't
this,
ask me how I know.
Yeah. Having been in a trade show that was promotional products industry at the first of the year, it was like the first of the year trade shows that was at the Mandalay, and then everything came after. You start learning which ones were the biggest ones, and we were always in the top 25 in 2 floors. And we really enjoyed that. That was many years ago. But anyhow, well, crimes involving vehicles have been on the decline in recent years, except for perhaps the most dangerous of them all, which is carjacking. It is on the rise. According to a new report, and many are pointing a finger at the mandating mask wearing by various governing bodies in response to the COVID bug as one of the reasons. So let's just say that you're wearing a mask, and forever and ever, wearing a mask was kind of synonymous with breaking in, robbing people and everything. Now with the stupid mandates, it's anybody's walking around there, perverts and everything. And the fact is now people can go up to your car and they look around, boom, they take the car and off. And no one suspects them one way or another. So it is a huge reason.
You can walk into a bank with a mask.
I know.
And ask the teller for money.
I know.
You just automatically get arrested for doing stuff like that.
I know.
You want to make sure that you lock your car doors when you're getting fuel at a gas station too, because if you're getting fuel and you're paying attention to try and put fuel in the car and your doors are unlocked, they can come around behind you and open your car door and get your cell phone, your laptop, whatever. So it's not just your
no, and
what you have in it as well.
We've had 2 break-ins at our
All
apartment.
the videos, all the videos are looking at people and they have masks on. They can't tell who
They can't tell.
Yeah.
And at my office complex, they had a bank of mailboxes, and they all got busted open. And so now they put in a new set on the other side, much more stronger duty, heavy duty. And then I just got an email today that says, if you put your check in the outside deposit box, that got busted into over the weekend.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, well, what do you think's going to keep going on while this government? So you know that. Anyway, so thank God we live in a Second Amendment country, and protect yourself. Up next is battery-operated cars prediction. So now listen to this closely, and now this is what I've been finding out. There was a very slow news week, but the biggest thing that they were talking about was electric vehicles. And up is the latest report from Automotive News predicts sales of pure battery-powered vehicles will surpass diesels in the next several years. But now listen to this. While diesels keep losing momentum in the passenger car segment, they continue to find strong demand in the pickup segment, but are expected to reach much larger than 4% of the market share in the coming decade. So now this translates, get this, the EVs will not surpass 4% of the automotive market, because that's what they're really saying. And then the ABI research put out by J.D. Powers points out that the majority of Americans still do not want electric vehicles because of all the issues, high prices, limited number of products, limited miles you can go before a charge. And so even though there's this concerted pressure, and our guest tonight is going to talk to us a little bit about this, to go EV, the demand is down to about 4% of the population, maybe 2%. And so as much as there's a decline on diesel, there's not that much more on. So I think we're going a long ways before we see it as being a...
Well, not to mention they catch on fire and blow up. You got like 10 seconds to get out of the dang thing.
They've still got issues with the batteries.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's seen the videos of the hoverboards, going sideways.
Oh, geez.
Imagine a bigger battery, and it's not
bigger
fun.
car.
Yeah.
Bigger hoverboard.
Yeah, it is. It's just amazing. And so the bottom line is we are not going to see it in a massive point of view. They keep pointing out, 2030, 24, whatever. The fact is, I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon. And now that gas is really cheap and there's just a surplus of oil all over the world because no one's driving to work anymore, I don't think we're going to have a problem with gas-powered vehicles for any time soon.
Yeah, well, you get who in there. It's going to be $10 a gallon.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, even so,
but
I think the people that watch this show are going to be okay with gas-powered vehicles.
Oh,
for the
yes.
foreseeable future.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Well, good news for university students who are into autonomous vehicles and race cars and all that. On October 23rd, 2021, the Indy Autonomous Challenge is being set up, and the university students will be competing for a $1.5 million prize.
Grant.
It's a prize for autonomous vehicles. Yeah. So my son did robotics in FIRST Robotics, and they had a certain part was autonomy, and then they ran them themselves. And then this last year they were supposed to be doing a Baja, which was to build a 4-wheel drive vehicle, with a kit, and compete. Well, with the COVID and all the restrictions, that's been bagged, unfortunately. He lost out like millions of other students lost out.
Yeah.
But maybe this year they'll open it up to students to be able to do it. But with all the restrictions with schools, good luck to see if there's going to even be anybody showing up, because right now everybody's still at home.
Everything's on a crawl space right now.
It really is. It's just pathetic.
We'll know more in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, we will. We will.
Things are going to change in about 2 weeks, one way or the other.
One way or another. I agree. Now,
there's still lots of really nice places to buy over here in Idaho.
Well, you were just
a thought.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys being here. Coming up on the Windshield View this week, we've got industry insider Matthew DeBord. He's been with us before. He's coming up next on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.
Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust is back for the first half of the Windshield View. And this week, welcome back, industry leader and insider, Matt DeBord. Welcome, Matt. I'm Ron.
It's great to be with you guys again. I've looked forward to this all year.
Oh, I like that.
All year.
year.
Far out.
How were you able to stand the pressure?
I don't know. I think I just clean living.
That's what it must be, I'm sure. So you're in scenic New Jersey, huh?
I'm in beautiful Montclair, New Jersey. Yes.
Montclair, New Jersey, the garden spot of the Garden State.
It is the Garden State. I actually quite like it here. And I mean, I spent 10 years living in Los Angeles, so I have paradise in the minds of some to compare it with. And
I see. Okay. Well, yeah, in the minds of some. My son lived in Los Angeles for about 10 years, and as you know, there's goods and bads.
Oh yes. I mean, I was trapped for hours on one of the bads, which is called the Sepulveda Pass, going through go from the valley down to Santa Monica on 405.
I was stuck at the truck stop in L.A. for like a day and a half, waiting for a comp check to get the heck out of there.
Well, and you'll appreciate this if you live there. About the second or third week that my son moved there, he said, "Hey, everybody says there's a lot of date groves out by Riverside, and I think we just go out there and get a date milkshake. It's a couple hours, back." He thought it was going to be a quick trip to Riverside.
Oh yeah, no.
There's no quick trip.
No.
There's no quick trip.
No.
Nowhere.
I think that shit was like water by the time he got it back.
Yeah.
So what's new in your end of the universe?
Oh gosh, well, we've had we probably had one of the strangest years in the history of the auto industry, I have to say.
Yep.
And I've been covering it, at Business Insider, where, I work, since the very beginning. I mean, the year started off, everyone thought we were going to have a pretty rocking and rolling year. There was no indication that people were going to stop buying cars. There was a lot of cool new stuff that was coming out. We saw a lot of really, quite interesting cars still launched during the course of the year, in spite of the pandemic. I mean, all the car shows got canceled.
Oh, I know.
Yes, damn it.
Yeah, but at the beginning of the year, everybody thought in Detroit and around the world that it was going to be probably a pretty good year. Maybe not as great as some of the record years that we'd seen since 2014, but not bad. And then kapow! Everything just kind of went crazy.
Yeah, the holes were punched for some pretty interesting stuff. I mean, the Bronco and stuff like that, people were saying, well, this is going to be good. And, Tesla was making moves and all, it looked like that. And then, as you say, into the deck for 7 months.
I mean, it never happened before.
No.
It just never happened before. Even in World War II, the auto industry was still capable of making cars. They didn't make cars. They made planes and tanks and stuff like that, but they could have still made cars. They had never shut the whole thing down.
No.
Not really. I mean, 1918, they weren't really, they were making cars in 1918, but they didn't shut the industry down then during the Spanish flu pandemic.
Nope.
This was unprecedented.
Yeah.
It is.
So I've been building my car, and then Brady's been working on his truck, even though the industry has it, but we're still working on our projects.
I've been collecting license plates. I got,
See those.
So I got one for you. Given all the goofiness that's happened in the industry and all of the sort of aborted plans, do you happen to know of any model releases or cars that were slated like this is going to be the thing that they just scrapped completely until next year?
That's a great question.
Because there must have been some, I would think. Looking at projections for potential sales, not necessarily a new model, but upgrades, something like that. I know they had to have had a couple that they just pulled back the reins.
It's a good
question.
question.
A Ford Bronco, right? Ford Bronco, they pulled that back, right?
Yeah.
Well, Bronco's interesting because they did launch Bronco. Yeah. And I actually have driven the Sport, which is the the baby Bronco, which is the Mexico-made truck. The other two, the 2-door and the 4-door, proper off-road Broncos, the ones that are supposed to really sort of move the needle for Ford on that front and give Jeep something to think about. And I guess, probably Range Rover and folks like that as well, Jaguar Land Rover. Those are just sort of delayed, and there's so much demand for them. Yeah. I think Ford, the last time I checked, I think Ford had something just south of 200,000 pre-orders.
Wow.
Bronco, 2-door and Bronco 4-door. So
they were making a big deal about, put your $500 down and, all of that. But, that's that and a quarter will get you a cup of coffee these days because there's no production happening.
Yeah. I think they're just, I think they expected a lot of demand. I don't think they expected quite as much. And I think they knew they could get the Bronco Sport into the market
Right.
And I think people are just going to have to be not because of the pandemic necessarily, because Ford knows what they're doing. I mean, they're capable of firing up the machinery once they want to get built.
Yep.
And the industry did reopen.
Yes, they did.
May and June.
Yep.
And thus far, I will give the industry some props here. It's been extremely safe. You haven't heard a whole lot about COVID-19 outbreaks at assembly plants or parts plants that are supporting either the Detroit Big Three up in the upper Midwest, or the transplants down south, or plants in Texas and places like that. So the industry's done a pretty good job of getting itself rolling again. I mean, so much so that that we're starting to see the sales figures come out for the tail end of 2020 now.
Yeah. And
I think the one I saw today that jumped out at me was GM, and they were down about 11%. Now you think 11%. If you told them they were going to be down 11% back in March and April, when they had seen sales fall, not 50%, but 30%, 40%,
right,
they would have said, "We'll take it."
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
We'll take it. I don't know. That's a great question you asked earlier, though. I don't know that there was anything that got. I mean, there's stuff that got pushed off as far as production and time to market. Yeah. But I think they pretty well launched everything that they had planned on launching. They just did it online instead of it.
The virtual launch. This is definitely the year of the virtual launch. I mean, because nobody was, rolling them on turntables at the car shows.
Yeah.
So they pretty much had to do that.
Well,
and if anything, the minor distraction of the Takata debacle took people's minds off of what cars were coming out and what cars weren't, and that's been brewing for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
So.
Well, my thinking is that with the virtual rollout, it's and we're going to talk about this on the other side, but it's been a game changer, because here we're doing a Zoom. Now it works because all the guys on our show are all living in different locations anyways. And so it really has made sense. But now with businesses saying, hey, we love this idea. Everybody's at home, they're working, we don't have to pay for office space. And now events, and this has been a move we've seen it in the last 3 years, a reduction in overall attendance by automakers anyways at some of these big auto events, because hey, we can do our own release. We can do a virtual, and it's been moving this way, and this, I think, is kind of like pushed it over the edge. And I don't see the big events returning anytime in that large scale. I mean, that's just my thinking. These guys are saving too much money.
What do you guys think about that? Because a lot of people do like to go to car shows. On the other hand, there's been some skepticism about whether they're worth it anymore for the car makers to, the dealers like it. The dealers like it when the car makers show up and show this stuff. But what do you guys think? Because a whole big discussion about this did break out in the industry over the course of the year, because they had to cancel so much stuff and do all these virtual launches. Do you think it's worth it to go to car shows anymore?
Well, we go to the automotive, the collector stuff, and the hot rod and the rat rod, and that's where everybody wants to be. Okay, yeah. But that's an enthusiast. As far as new cars,
I got to say, we went to the new car release, the International Auto Show, every year for decades, and there is something about, you can look at this car online, you can do the 360 videos, you can do all of that, and the virtual test drives and all that kind of stuff, but there really is something visceral about going up and sitting in the car and talking to the salesman and feeling the leather and smelling. I mean, all of that is very, very, it's a big part of, would I buy? Could I buy? Maybe I'll buy. I mean, that's, it's a hands-on kind of a thing.
But you can do that at a dealership.
You can, but you can't see all the marks at a dealership. You can only see what they've got. So is it worth it, to put the 40 footers together with all the cars and put them out there, or not? I just, like you say, Matt, the car salesman will tell you, bring them.
Is it the car show? The cars that are at the car show, don't they have every extra that you can possibly get?
They're all loaded. Sure,
but if you go to the dealership, they're not going to have all the bells and whistles that you might see at the car show. You get to see all and every one of the car makers. Their car.
Well, hang on. We're going to be right back with more of our show.
What's going on with the other one?
Back in Vehicle City.
Yes, we are. We're back with the second half of the Windshield View on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust, and our conversation with Matt DeBord continues. And we were just talking about the virtual car shows, and I just want to point out that within the motorcycling realm, I used to go to the International Motorcycle Show, and then they had a number of other ones, and they all just shrunk. This last year, supposedly they were putting some on and doing live events. But I'm thinking because you can do a 360 virtual tour of a car now with all the software and the integration, that people are going to be looking at that. And then there's YouTube, where everybody releases all their video on YouTube and the other formats. And then, hey, if I want to, I just go down to my local dealership and I go sit in it. It's not as nice as it used to be, because now with the COVID restrictions, the mask wearing and all that garbage, people may not be as, I don't know. I know China, by the way, just had their big show a couple months ago. I mean, they no masks, no nothing. And so
they sent the virus over here. Why do they?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But I mean, but they were able to do it, and so it seemed like that was a pretty big show.
Yeah.
What do you think,
The
Matt?
interesting thing, though, about the car shows is the dealers. I'm talking about the U.S. context for the car shows, not necessarily the European shows. But I think it's pretty much the same deal. Is the dealers like them because the people come in there, and it's like a giant ad for going and buying a car. So the dealers in the area, in the region, think that if you go to Los Angeles, for example, they love the LA Auto Show. So usually very well attended. And people come in there and they see cars and bring their kids, and it gets the idea in their head that they should go to the dealership and check out what's on the floor. So to Ron's point, you're not always going to see what's on the show floor on the dealer's floor.
You're right.
Different, but nonetheless, it gets the idea in your mind that you want to buy a car. But Ron, you made a comment earlier. I think Brady, you did as well. That you still worked on your cars. It wasn't like car culture went away. I mean,
not at all.
On a little rally, I got to drive this vintage Alfa Romeo up to upstate New York. It was really actually probably the coolest car I drove all year, to be quite honest with you. And I drove a lot of cars this year. Just because the pandemic was going on doesn't mean that I didn't get press vehicles. The industry did a great job of keeping us. I mean, it was almost too many.
Oh yeah,
they had so many vehicles that they were going to launch in Europe that they couldn't launch.
Sucks to be you.
They sent them here. I had like, it was crazy. I had two Porsche 911s in a row at one point. It was just nuts. But I found that car culture still held up. Once people figured out how to be able to do things safely, people still worked on cars. People still rallied with their vehicles. People still got together.
And there were a lot of cruises and stuff and gatherings.
Cruises took over.
Happened mostly. I don't say mostly, but a lot of out of frustration. Like, we can't have a cruise. We can't have a car show, but we could still get together and drive. And a lot of people did.
Yep.
We did. We went to a creepy cruise up to up north there.
Yeah, we had our own cruise at the on Halloween Day, and about a half dozen to dozen cars joined us, and we had a nice day gathering and had a nice few stops along the way. And there was some bigger ones here up in our neck of the woods where hundreds and hundreds of cars got together.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the Lake Stevens one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we have seen is the old days in the 80s, that's when all the cruising got kind of cut off, the local governments, no, you can't do that. Well, now that's all picked up, and they're all happy to have them out there driving because people stop, still go to the drive-ins, go to whatever, get their food. And so the municipalities have not done anything. They're actually like, thumbs up, go ahead and cruise. We don't care.
Drive-ins came back a little bit too.
Yes, they are.
A few things I did in the 80s was cruise around in cars and go to drive-ins.
Yes.
Drive-in theaters. Drive-in theaters around here are opening up, and you can go to the drive-in theaters now.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's your original social distancing.
Yes, sir.
No, exactly. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, this is another thing that the industry found out was that they back at the beginning of the year when they thought it was going to be a catastrophe, they were completely terrified that they were not going to be able to sell any cars to anybody.
Right.
And a lot of innovation on the dealership side happened. Dealers really, put in a lot of really necessary safety stuff to reassure the public that it was safe to come to the dealership. But they also started doing touchless deliveries and all kinds of, and they really ramped up their online approach to selling cars. So we wound up with, not a bad year. I mean, it's not been added up yet. That'll happen this week. We'll find out how many cars were sold, but it's just a little bit south of 17 million.
Wow.
Passenger vehicles and trucks and SUVs in the U.S., which is that's
a lot of cars.
Yeah.
See a lot of them on the road.
Speaking of touchless delivery, that actually brings something to my mind. You know, there's companies like Carvana, which, you know, they'll basically, you pick a car online, they deliver it to you, you never touch. Have you seen, or are you aware of any figures where companies like that, you know, they must have had some growth over the last year just because of the situation?
I talked to Carvana, as well as some of these other folks who were active in that space because they're, you know, internet startups. You know, they're not your traditional franchise car dealership model, and they were, you know, optimistic about how things were going to work out for them this year. They also, I think, maybe got a little bit overconfident in the sense that not in a really bad way, but they started to think maybe the whole market was going to get remade,
right,
you know, along the lines of the way they were doing business, and it actually turned out didn't shake down that way. What it did do is move the needle slightly in the direction of people out there who want to buy a car possibly making more demands of dealerships about how they want to test drive the car, how they want to take delivery of the car, and really in particular how they want to do the onerous F&I process.
Oh,
you know, I bought a lot of cars, right? And I go into the dealership and I always tell the person I talk to, look, I'm not going to try to, you know, haggle you down to some crazy price or anything like that. We'll come to terms here. We'll talk about the loan. Everything will be fine. But I probably am not going to have time to sit around for the 2 or 3 hours it's going to take your F&I guy to run me through all the paperwork. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you
the corner office.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to give you some money for the car, and I'm going to come back tomorrow, and we're going to do this deal tomorrow, the next day, something like that. But don't worry about it. I'll come back and we'll get the deal done. You don't have to panic. I'm still going to buy the car.
I'll sign something. You'll give me the keys.
Yeah. So I've done this a bunch of times, you know, and my feeling is that this is, you know, me, because I bought like 15, 16 cars in my life. The average person, you know, just gets completely, you know, mortified by this process, and it's just unpleasant for them. And what happened because of the way that a lot of these folks innovated around how cars are going to be, you know, sold, was that they moved the needle a little bit more in the direction of the consumer being able to call the shots on that front.
Right.
And the dealership saying, all right, well, you know, we're just gonna have to do this remotely and then drop the car off and they'll have all the paperwork there. And of course, this prevents them from being able to do a lot of upselling.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Oh, yes.
It's not necessarily something they want to do. But the alternative is this person doesn't buy a car from me and maybe never buys a car from me again or even thinks about me. And, you know, I got to meet their needs, you know, so that was something that actually changed, not a huge amount during the year, but a little bit. So I think we're probably going to see some progress on that over the next couple of years.
Well, and I also was reading on the dealer front in some of the industry magazines that basically a lot of them have a skeleton crew now. So the sales, instead of a sales staff of 20, they're down to 5, and they do most of their sales online. And if you think about it, my sons and the generation, let's just say 40 and below, they're just already adapted to buying online. So they might see it, they place an order, then they come into the dealership and they take a look at it, or vice versa, they bring it to their house, they do a test drive. But they're already used to buying everything, all their electronics, all their gadgets, everything from clothing already online.
One click.
Yes.
Yep.
So I click once, and everything's already baked into the e-commerce platform, and it shows up a couple of days later. And then they have to buy a car, and they think, why is this so daggone challenging? Can I just
do Zelle or PayPal or something?
So another thing that we were looking at, and we talk about this a lot, and I think we talked last time you had on, but there's all this, I call them globalists, push to get everybody in electric battery cars, etc. And we just did a report, just came out, that the predictions are that maybe 4% in the next few years might be a reasonable idea of what percentage of cars that are going to be sold in America are going to be EV. And yet there's these huge mandates by California, European nations, etc., of and in China, of going all EV, when in reality, we have a surplus of oil. We have no one really wants to buy these things for many, many reasons. What is your take on that? Why is there such a pressure to go that route when the population doesn't want to go, and it's just not even feasible yet because of the length of time you have to be in a car to get a charge before you go to the next step? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, not only that, but these vehicles are expensive.
Very expensive.
So it's quite challenging for a consumer to be able to get a reasonable car loan on an EV these days, or, you know, like the kind of leasing terms that they get on a you know, perfectly fuel efficient and easy to live with gas car. I have a pretty solid take on this at this point. So my view is that a lot of people in the industry are saying we're probably going to see something like 25 to 30% of the market be electric. That's globally by 2030.
I hear that.
It is going to be driven by the fact that the diesel situation the bottom has just fallen out of diesel in Europe. So they're going to replace diesel with something else, and they're going to replace it with electric. And in China, you have a market that's north of 20 million annually now in terms of, the light vehicle and truck sales. That's probably going to go to like 35 or 40, over the next decade. And much of that growth, the government has decided is going to be electric. So there's a huge amount of government support behind that. So what that leaves is the U.S. and North America really as the most competitive market that there is right now, but it's completely dominated by pickups and SUVs.
Right. Diesel trucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Diesel trucks.
Totally, yeah. So
they're not going away. Yeah.
No, the diesels are not going to go away. I just think that what we're going to wind up with is a U.S. North America kind of framework where it's still mostly gas powered. Yeah. You have a kind of hybrid in Europe and a lot of small cars, a lot of small electric vehicles, which would be completely unpopular here. I mean, they're not going to be able to take small electric vehicles from Europe, which would be, urban vehicles largely, and put them here. They won't have the range. They won't be people. It's just not going to work.
Arizona.
And then in China, there's going to be a huge amount of growth on electrification. So you'll start to see all the OEMs who want to sell electric vehicles, make them for the China market.
Well, but also in China, I mean, most of the cars are in the urban areas, and that's like an eighth, maybe a tenth of the entire country. Out in the sticks, I don't know how they're going to do EVs because there's no support for there's no system.
How are they going to charge it? How are they going to charge the damn thing?
Well, that's the thing. I probably told y'all last time I had this sort of gentleman's bet with a former colleague of mine, still colleague, but he works for Mercedes now. He's not a journalist, about how the F-150 is going to be a big deal in China at some point.
Yeah.
And his argument is that, the Chinese are never going to buy pickup trucks. And I
put a Tesla motor in it.
No. They are going to buy pickup trucks. Everybody wants pickup trucks. Trust me. Everybody wants pickup trucks. So I actually do think that the big launch, the thing that's really going to move the needle on EVs in the North American market is going to be when these pickup trucks start to hit the
maybe so.
Well, that's because the value.
But it's a style of vehicle, not so much the power chain.
Well, you know what it is? I was talking to Ford about this the other day, and here's the insight I got from Ford, which is that what they think is they're more so than the suburban person who needs a vehicle. They're not going to necessarily be a huge EV customer. Right. They think that the contractor, the working market, is going to be is going to really see, and particularly folks who have to buy multiple trucks, they're going to see the value of these things because they got basically a rolling generator there. Okay. So you've got something you can power a whole job site off of, and you can do it indoors if you have to. So you're not stuck outside. If you've got an indoor construction situation and you can't run a generator in there, you could roll that truck in and do work in there. And they think this is going to be of high value to them. And I also think they're going to be able to move the needle pretty significantly on the commercial side, to sell EV vans into fleet operators. And the fleet operators are probably like that because they can centrally charge them. So that gets to, Ron, your point, that gets to their whole, problem with charging. They don't have to worry about charging them, in a consumer sense, because they'll be able to have a central charging location and just
like a UPS.
So these things are replacing the Sprinter market, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Ford's very excited about their e-Transit, which is their Transit their Sprinter competitor. So that's my take on the EV market. But right now it's 2%. And optimistically, it grows to like 20-30%. But one would want to be somewhat skeptical about that. Yeah, well, 10 years ago, I was talking to people who said it was going to be 10 to 15%, maybe 20% by now.
Yeah, I don't see it.
It just hasn't manifested.
I just don't see it because logistic-wise, I know they're getting money somehow to pour into this, but my personal view. We hear the magic numbers, but like you said, 10 years ago, you were thinking it was going to be this way. And the fact is, it's going to be certain segments. China's going to drive a lot of that, but there's going to be all of South America. They're not going to do it. I don't see, like you said, the whole North American, South American continent is just in Africa. I just don't see any of that. But yeah, definitely China, where they got the infrastructure, it makes total sense.
Africa. That's
Toyota.
Yeah. Well, the Africa market's still.
It's nothing to worry about.
There's a lot of potential for growth there, but I think if you're going to put your money anywhere as a big OEM, big car maker, you're going to go look
China.
at China. Everybody knows the growth is going to be in China, and that's where they want to
go. Yeah. So another thing that I was interested in is that with the reduction of diesels and stuff, but what are what are some of the other things that you've seen within the industry that maybe that you said when this first close down came, you're thinking that this was going to all take, and then all of a sudden it started bubbling up to the top and things have been moving. We know from our side that all the custom and the fab shops, they're busier than ever. They're looking for employees because people got their money and they're like, I'm going to go in and put my money into that hobby car I've been putting off for all these years.
They have time,
and they've got time. So from our side, we've seen it just blowing up. And so
I have to say, I think that this is.
You know what? We are down to like 5 seconds.
It's
Matt,
a huge national tragedy, but it's in a lot of ways it's the greatest year the car business ever had.
Yep. Thanks, Matt, for coming on with us. This is Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust, and we got a great story coming up with next on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.
Thank you, guys.
It's time for Car Confidential, another great story with Fender's Friends and Friends. Let her rip there, Brady.
Oh, that's tater chip to you, buddy.
Tater chip?
Not a tater chip. Hey, we are, in fact, doing yet another from Fender's Fins and Friends. We love Lance's books because they're kind of fun. You can get them on Amazon, of course, if you find that your bookshelf needs an empty space to fill. And Fender's Fins and Friends is one, and Grins, Gears, and Gasoline is the other one. But he's got a couple more out now that have nothing to do with cars. I'm not sure. Lance, let me just speak to you for a second. Would you please write a book about your radio ranch? You should. He's collecting radios.
Yeah.
He's got a whole garage now full of radios, antique radios. He should put a book together, a picture book of all right. So
radio, sound salvation.
This one is called Diamonds in the Dealership. And it kind of goes to where Lance is headed these days. The collector car hobby is not just about old cars. Within the hobby are people who love old signs as much as old cars. At one time, all the old cars were new cars sitting in or ordered from a new car dealership. The dealership was surrounded by signs identifying the manufacturer and also signs boasting about the incredible attributes of some of the cars. Some featured Jetaway and Torque Flight transmissions and Jetfire rocket and Blue Flame motors and Vista Cruiser and Hornet styling. The late 1940s through the 1960s were the best years for bombastic verbiage and hyperbole. Extra points if you can spell either one of those.
Bombastic?
Bombastic?
Yes. Bombastic verbiage and hyperbole. To many car collectors, the signs in the showroom displays from that era are just as exciting as the cars. And I kind of gotta agree. They're really cool stuff to have in your garage. There's some of them behind me. Well, not so many. License plates anyway. Service station signs are also highly sought after by collectors. A large Texaco or a Shell sign always makes a car lover's garage or family room more festive. Signs proclaiming the virtue of no knocks or fire chief gasoline bring a smile. Lance's garage, by the way, is filled with this stuff. If you've seen pictures of it, it's all in there. Now, this hasn't always been the case, of course. For years, these things the signs and the accessories were displayed and then abandoned when the new model year's promotional items arrived and the next ad campaign began. The preceding models and model year's items or gas additive proclamations instantly became junk, and soon they were added to the local landfill where Lance would go and find them.
Oh, yes.
Fortunately, many items were banished to the dealer's storeroom or attic, and as time went by, these items became desirable to car buffs, and some lucky old car aficionados were able to get their hands on them. Most of the time, dealers thought the signs and displays were just junk, taking up space, so they were glad to get rid of them. You want that piece of junk? Heck, you can have it. Get it out of here. The happy recipient was thrilled to have a flashy sign to hang in the bedroom or the garage. What's more attractive than a huge, wouldn't you really rather have a Buick sign?
Or a red Pegasus neon.
See the USA in a Chevrolet. Hanging on a collector's wall, that would be the thing. If a sign included neon, well, then you had the most desirable sign of all. I began collecting signs in the 60s. 2 signs in the collection were actually retrieved from dumpsters.
Oh, wow.
Times changed, and the dealers realized that they had things that people actually were willing to purchase. So what was free began selling for $10 or $20, and a few decades later, these same signs were selling for $200 to $20,000 each. Yep, there were 4 zeros in that last number, and I'll warn you, that should sit down and you could kind of take just a moment before you read an article like this, because a friend of mine just paid, hold on. Most of us couldn't afford to buy. Today, the signs we obtained in the past, the $20 purchase made in 1985 might now be worth $2,000. Could be. But most of us don't care about the monetary value. It's how fantastic they look hanging in the garage, not necessarily how much they're worth. Now, for the past 20 years, when Lance was hosting television's vintage vehicle show, plug, it took him to a lot of places. Been fortunate to see a lot of collections of really incredible signs.
I've seen some of those shows.
Oh, yeah. And a few of these collections are owned by some of the most famous icons and celebrities in the automotive and entertainment business. Most of them are owned by the average guy who spent his or her hard-earned dollars to occasionally purchase just an additional sign to hang in the garage. There's still good deals available for the dedicated collector who's willing to search really hard for a bargain. Recently, I purchased a large 1920s sign advertising automotive electrical parts. It felt like 1975 again when I handed over a whopping $18.
Wow.
For the sign.
Yeah.
At the other end of the spectrum is a sign recently purchased by a friend of mine. He began collecting signs 12 years ago and now has perhaps the best collection in the world. He recently paid $44,000 for a sign advertising a brand of oil from the 40s.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a 2x3 foot piece of metal. It's more valuable than a lot of the items displayed in a jewelry store. I warn you to be sitting down before you finish this article. And I have to tell you, just yesterday, I was cruising through Facebook and I found an outfit that sells those neon Brady's Garage, signs you could have. We could put them up in your house, several different sizes. And I'm kind of a sucker for that sort of stuff. So I bought one. It's news to my wife. She's just hearing this as we speak.
Uh-huh. There's a pillow
only $197.
What? Only.
But it's really going to look cool.
I know. All right.
But but these things, they really are out there. They're available, and it's kind of fun. I've got a bunch of signs in my garage, license plates and other stuff, but also signs for various brands of things, Harley Davidsons and Chevys. I've got a GMC sign, and I know Ron has a lot of stuff in his garage that's
Olympia neon sign, Olympia Brewing Company. Bunch of stuff.
The only thing I got is our little horsepower
you
chrome
have
and rust.
Horsepower chrome and rust barn find dust sign, which, by the way, coming up, we got a winner in the trivia contest.
Oh, good.
Right on.
Yeah, over the holiday. It was very exciting. But you know what? Again, I got to say nice words about Lance, because his books are really cool, and you can get them on Amazon. And coming up a little later this year in 2021, we're going to celebrate the return of David Dickinson's old Car Nut book series.
Sweet.
So stay with us and enjoy.
Well, you were talking about these signs. I remember my friend, and we were down, and this is in Ferndale. I was probably freshman in high school, and we were down at his house, and he was in this like 4-story, one of the grand mansions of Ferndale, and they lived there. And in his room there was a crawl space, so we went up above, and we were starting to build like a little fort up there because it was all open. Well, there was a sign up there. It was an old drugstore sign, and it was huge. We're like 3 by 6, and it was like, this will work great for the flooring, So you didn't, but somebody had shoved that up there, just enough that they could get it up there. And that's where you find the stuff, in barns. And there was another place that was right on a gravel road that was down from another friend's, and we would sneak into this barn, and they had all that kind of stuff, all the pop bottles, farm implements, stuff from stores and everything. And we got chased out of there, so we couldn't go in there. And I'm thinking somebody who had a treasure trove of all these old things, and we're talking in the 70s, early 70s. This is when we were crawling around in there. But we have this place that's right up the street from us. It's Keeler's Corner. It's in a historic spot. The owner has to keep it the way it is. The place is getting run down further and further, but it's got a bunch of the Pegasus stuff and all that. Personally, I will not pay any money for that kind of thing. If I find it for free, great. I've just got a bunch of old hot rod centerfolds in my garage that I've got on there that are really cool stuff from Hot Rod Magazine, and then I'll have that in my garage. But you guys have been collecting things, and and a lot of people do.
I think it's one of the things that car people do. You see something that you like, and it's like, that'd be cool hanging on the wall.
I got movie posters. That's what I got.
Yeah, sure.
I got some of those.
I got about 10 more I need to get on the wall. So maybe some of those will go in my garage.
Lots of albums.
Yep, me too. Albums.
I used to have movie posters because for a while I did movie reviews on the radio, which is a great gig. And we used to get all kinds of movie posters, and that's where those things lived.
Well, that is great, and we had a great guest, and so kind of tied in there. So,
yeah. Hey, the Nathan Lipinski Weekly Trivia question is coming up next, so stick around. We're going to do that right after this.
If you can, you're an El Camino man. Only you can.
It's the El Camino man. That's him over there, Steve. He's the guy with the El Camino.
I know he is.
Sooner or later,
Steve.
we're going to help him build this car.
Yes, we are.
Yep.
We are. Hey, this is Around the Wheel. This is where we usually talk about upcoming events and stuff. And I promise you right now, this year, 2021, is going to be a year with automotive events for us to talk about. We are going to do that. As a matter of fact, there was one that happened last weekend, which we didn't get a chance to talk about because it was our end of the year show. Our friend Thomas Owens, who's been on the show several times, he's the founder and leader of Pacific Northwest Custom Coupes and Sedans, the Facebook group. It's got thousands of members. They did a really, really cool charitable event over the last weekend. If you go to their Facebook webpage, you can see the event. A young lad with cancer was, looking for some things for Christmas, and they generated a whole bunch of stuff. They got toys, they got a dirt bike, they got all kinds of things.
Oh, wow.
Great story. Seriously, go and take a look at that. We'll put a link to it on our page.
Excellent.
Last time we did a trivia question, the question was, in 1911, what Swiss engineer built his very first car in America with financing from the Durant Company? It's kind of a complex question, and I didn't think anybody was going to get it, to be honest with you. I threw it out there. But you know what? We got a guy from Wyandotte, Minnesota. Wyandotte, Minnesota. Daryl Hudson. He sent me an email, said, I got this, and he did. So the answer, the Swiss engineer who did it, wait, was... Where'd I put it? It's here.
I'm on pins and needles.
Yeah. It was the guy who started, wait. He started, William Durant. He was a self-made millionaire before he ever joined the auto business.
Oh, wow.
He bought Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Cadillac, formed General Motors. He almost bought Ford, but he didn't have enough money. But Durant always kept himself kind of stretched thin. He got money to do this in order to get everything started, and then he lost it all in the stock market, and in the Depression, he was penniless.
Wow.
But William A. Durant was the guy's name, and for some reason or another, Daryl Hudson knew that. So congratulations, buddy.
Wow.
Put your certificate up with the
congratulations, Daryl.
Horsepower, barn find
Rust.
dust. That's right. And this week's question, here we go.
Here we go.
Even
I
as you
can't
speak.
wait.
This week's question, Lee Iacocca, big name in both Ford and Chrysler. Everybody knows Lee Iacocca was basically responsible for the Mustang. That was kind of his baby, and it got out there and did the thing. But he was also responsible for what other really iconic car.
Ooh.
If you know, Lee Iacocca now, not Carroll Shelby, because this has been, the movie's been on, Ford versus Ferrari.
Right.
But Lee Iacocca was responsible for what other iconic car? If you know, send us an email at contact@horsepowerchromeandrust.com. You can go to the Facebook page and put a messenger thing in. You can do whatever you think you need to do. Let us know. You too could get a winner's certificate on our Facebook page, which will also be plastered all over every other place that we see our lovely icon. For heaven's sake, we're on. How many places are we on now, Steve? Do you have a list?
Probably about
up to about 20 now.
If you go to YouTube, you'll see that we're listed on probably 15 or more podcast
we're getting
outlets.
Huge, people.
And
huge.
then
and we thank you, by the way, for that, for liking and following.
Very much.
Subscribing to our stuff. It's really cool. We had a really, really good time with Matt DeBord today.
Great guy.
Nice guy.
Yeah,
nice.
he's just a super guy, and it's cool to have somebody who's that connected to the inside of the industry, because this year is going to be a very strange year
upside down
for the automotive industry. But we're pretty optimistic that things are going to come back, because they can't go anywhere further down.
Well, and that's exactly right. We found out that actually the year ended better than they were thinking it would.
Yep.
A lot of things are still in the process. The pressure to stay and conform is still on us.
I see a lot of new cars out there.
But the fact is, people are buying houses, people are buying cars, people are still living. And I think, hey, if you're not commuting every day, an hour one way, an hour back, now you got some money in your pocket. And all of a sudden,
there's that.
Yep.
Or you could be like our friend Phil, who's now up to 900 project cars in his yard. I don't think he's got any room for his house anymore. Hey, listen, we reach over 1 million car enthusiasts every week. We thank you for coming, and this is going to be a terrific year here at Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust. Had a great time talking with Matt DeBord. And listen, make sure that you are aware that it's your responsibility to keep your eyes on the road, your hands on the wheel, your foot to the floor. For Ron Foreman and Steve Johan, Brady Wright, Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.